Today, we want to address what we were actually doing while being distracted by all these individuals that were trying to get something for themselves. Now, we made some demands of the government that we're going to uphold. We're going to keep demanding of the government that they return us back to our lawful right. And this was in relation to your driver's license. Now, they treat you like you're incapable and you don't have a right to use your own land, a right to use your own land. So we want to address this because it's causing everyone to get into trouble, and none of you are standing up for yourselves in a united people, a united federal people that have something to say against something that is administering your country. And that something might be, we will no longer allow you to treat us like your slaves under a driver's license by making it a privilege when it is our God-given right to use the land under our feet. A God-given right to travel on the King's highways and byways. Now, there is proof here in a court case on the medical side that private vehicle registration and commercial vehicle registration are two different separate things, because medically they look at them in two different lights. Now, if that's the case, private registration is not commercial registration. And what this government has done has treated you all like you're acting in commerce on the roads instead of in the private. So we make a demand of the government, a demand that they return the license back to a competency test and take it away from everyone at 65 years of age, just like they do in England. What they have done to you is caused you to be in the commercial side of registration, allowing the police to fine you in a commercial capacity all the time, fundraising on behalf of the state, human trafficking, putting sweat labour on your backs directly on behalf of the state driving you into poverty, the state causing the burden of finance upon you, the state creating all of the problems in your home financially, just trying to register one vehicle to travel around your own lands. So that's number one. We want our licenses to be returned back to a competency instead of a privilege. And number two, we want to be returned back to the private and not treated like we are in a commercial capacity by the state's police, by the state police. It's actually a crime to treat people in that capacity by pushing them into it, knowing they have a right with God, knowing they have a right of self-determination in the matter, knowing they're the naked owners of that constitution under that foreign administration. Those two things would alleviate most of the problems financially in your country that are caused by the state, by these United Nations serving police officers. Make no mistake, no police officer in Australia serves you. They serve the United Nations. Make no mistakes. Their police prosecutors work for the Public Prosecutors Association in The Hague. They work directly for this international system under model law, a law they brought here to oppress and push you into poverty with, a law they brought here to raise revenue from you to pay off debts that your ancestors agreed to. But we didn't agree to something after 1941. We were pushed into it pushed into it. And the slavery commenced. So our demands are in direct relation to that slavery. The driver's license is your slavery, not your birth certificate. The birth certificate is the name God told you not to put in vain, not to use God's name in vain, not to go and put it into debt, right? And then the privilege that is the license being pushed on you like it's not a right. It's a privilege, right? It should be your right to move around in your private vehicle without a license. And that license is just competency. So you would have a license. Yeah, I'm competent to use this vehicle. I'm competent to operate this machinery. I'm competent to do it in front of everyone else. And I don't do it in a commercial capacity. So there's our demands. Okay? Now, to fulfill this is not to run around breaking the law all the time, thinking that you're above the law. You're dealing with a bunch of war criminals. Real world war criminals running your governments that have caused real world war crimes on you. Instead of attacking them, instead of pushing this on them and making them accountable for all of their actions, what do? You run around like you're not liable to any of this stuff. You run around like that's not you, so you don't have to follow all of it when it's your military occupier under the Hague Conventions that became the war criminals that they are. Look at Anthony Albanese's actions and equate them to the war crimes they actually are. Look at the police officers in New South Wales' actions and equate them to the war crimes they actually are. Right? We can make demands, they can ignore us. You can run around like idiots trying to get out of fines and believe that they're not going to attack you. They're going to beat the shit out of you, attack you, abuse you, treat you like a foreigner in your own land, because that's what the police are. It's exactly what they are. They work for the United Nations as debt collectors, handing out human trafficking notices every day, all day, driving slavery on you. Right? So what was our third demand in our previous video? Was to give electricity to all the residences for free because they own the electricity grid. It's theirs. It is not a private company's electricity grid. A private company was employed to administer that electricity grid. So that's our third demand. We got 1, driver's license; 2, registration; 3, electricity. These are all things that the people should be aware of, should wake up to the fact that you've become the slaves of a government, the slaves of Albanese's force. You'll do what Albanese tells you as he undermines your constitution and tries to take away you out of it, tries to take away you under the blessing of Almighty God out of that constitution. If you want to address this, we must address this properly. This means gathering the funds to walk into those courtrooms and charge these people with the actual criminal offences that they have in fact carried out, called war crimes. We have pointed out a command line responsible for those crimes. We have pointed out a parliament responsible for those crimes. We have pointed out the Senate responsible for those crimes. And you sit here whining like children, running around thinking you can drive without rego, and drive without a license, and do all of these things instead of address it for what it is. Human trafficking, slavery, done by a state government against international law. Against international law. You have a right of family. You have a right of self-determination. You have a right of religion. You have a right of all these things denied by the state. Denied by the state. And you sit there on your hands thinking you can do it on Facebook. You sit there on your hands thinking you can get out of a fine and it's going to change your world around you because you're a whining little child. Instead of gathering the men and saying to a government that is your servants, no, we will not be ruled by war criminals, real world war criminals. Why should we listen? Why should we follow your laws? You break them yourselves. You break the very laws you put on the table. You force mandated all that crap. No jibby, no pay. You did that to all of the poor in this country. You did that. You are wholly complicit in breaking the very rules you put on the table. Sip, 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 sip from that poison chalice. You already took the sip, Albo. You already took the sip, Morrison. You already took the sip, One Nation. You already took the sip. Everyone in that parliament never stood up, never spoke, never told the truth, never put it down on the table, never held them to account to the very rules that they were obligated to follow. Never once, Pauline, did you bring this up. Never once, Malcolm, did you bring this up. You had an obligation to charge these people with the war crimes that they committed. But instead, you watched all these idiots run around like sovereign citizens and lapped it up and laughed at your own country's demise that you all caused in that parliament. And it's about time the people started to realise you are a bunch of war criminals. You've been caught out in your war crimes. They are being laid out in front of you. The rules you put on the table, you're obligated to. And it's about time you followed them. It's about time you adhered to the rules you expect everyone else to follow. It's about time we hit that hammer and hit that nail on the head, isn't it? And to get that done, we need to walk in towards these people with the right paperwork, with the right claims, with the right everything. And what I've seen for the last 4 or 5 years is a bunch of zombies running around thinking that they are not party to a country. It's not a system. It's your country falling apart. And you never stood up to defend it against those war criminals. Now, I don't want to carry on forever because I'll just get emotionally involved in it, and I don't want to do that. I want to use my brain. I want to put it down on the courtroom record. I want to put it down in the public sphere. I want everyone to realise that these people are war criminals. I want everyone to realise I did this on the courtroom record and I didn't run around like idiots around the country playing all of this bogan stupid. I stood up for you, right? And it's cost me a lot to do that. And we want to keep doing that. So donations down below if you want to keep moving forward, because we're not here to fight one individual's problems. We're here to stand up as a country and move towards that parliament and start pointing the finger at all of those pedophiles, 28 pedophiles hidden inside the judiciary in this country. And Heffernan said we would have no faith in the judiciary if we found out who they were. If we found out that our own High Court and our own Supreme Courts were a bunch of criminals themselves, what would we think? We would think, you're a war criminal and you deserve to be accountable for those crimes, and you deserve to unseal those records, and you deserve to put it all on record in front of everyone. Name the 28 pedophiles, Pauline. Name them all, for fuck's sake. You think we live in a fair country when this is how you run it? Hiding behind closed doors? Doing things behind people's backs as their representatives? Or do you serve the United Nations, Pauline? Do you serve a different master to the very country you live in? Do you serve war criminals, Pauline? Are you in cahoots with a criminal gang that created one of the most heinous criminal offences known to mankind? Well, I think the people should start to realise that that's a problem. I think the people should gather the masses together and start saying, no, we won't be ruled by war criminals. No, we won't let you hide 28 pedophiles in our judiciary. No, sack the lot of them, all of them. Do a full entire background check on every one of our judges and put it on the table in the media in front of everyone. Show them, show them, show them. You won't, because you know the entire country will turn on you for being what you all are, for being those pedophiles, for being those drug dealers, for being those people that steal land, for being those people that push the commerce across the land and push everyone out of their own businesses. Locking people down, closing their businesses, all for a forced industrial revolution 4.0. And I think the people are starting to realise it now. Not only are you twisting a country to be something else, you have committed some of the worst criminal offences in the act of doing so. And you think that we should put up with your little mind master Klaus Schwab and his little gang of criminals in the World Economic Forum because they've got all the money? You're sadly mistaken, government. There is a law on the table, and we know all about your model law, and we know all about your Hague and your Geneva, and we know how you broke it, and we know how you're liable, and we know how you're responsible for all of those war crimes. So now I'm asking everyone to realise something. We don't fuck around on the streets. We don't run from the police. We challenge them over their criminal actions. These people are evil, right? These are the kinds of people that don't care about their countrymen. They would be willing to watch you suffer because they handed you a fine, because they think they're above the fine, because they work for the police. But they don't realise that their family's in poverty along with all the rest of you while they served at United Nations, driving their family into poverty. Driving their family into poverty. You can't work this out yet. So I'm asking all of you now to look at what has been done for all of you, instead of running around trying to take it and make something of it for yourself and fuck it up all the time. You fuck it up all the time because you don't know, and you don't respect those that walked in and did something for you. And I think it's about time we all started to realise this. We need to stand up as a country. We need to point the finger at real world criminals, real world war criminals that have committed some of the worst offences known to mankind, and we need to stand up and point the finger at them and hold them to account for all the stuff they've done. So I'll leave that. I think you all need to realise something. This running around like you're a hero, has been going on time and time and time again. Right, Glenn Bowley? Right, Brett Payne? Right, Karen B? I mean, I could list a whole bunch more names that have tried to mimic and copy something because, oh, I want to know it for myself. Well, learn it then. Don't rush into it. Don't get into trouble trying to rush into it. It's kind of stupid, isn't it? That you would end up in this position by yourself with no one else around you to stand up and speak for you and defend you because you did something selfish instead of standing up again as a people and pointing the finger at those real world war criminals. And I mean real world war criminals. These people poisoned an entire population. These people poisoned an entire population, going against all of the rules that they put down on the table when they decided to administer. They put the poison chalice to their own lips, they took a sip, and now it's too late. They already did it. Right? Make no mistakes. They already did it. Now it's just a matter of holding them to account for what they've already done. Make no mistakes. Make no mistakes at all for what they've already done. Right? So instead of reacting to the police all the time, instead of reacting to the council all the time, instead of reacting to the state all the time, how about we get together and put it on them for a change and make accusations of them for the crimes they've committed? And how about you realise that they've done this for 40, 50 years, hidden all of their crimes behind closed doors. It's probably the reason why McBride spoke up, because he realised that command responsibility were a bunch of war criminals, and they held him to account for leaking secrets. A crime is not a secret. A crime is a crime. And if McBride thought that the country needed to know that they were being run by war criminals, he should have had every right to come out and say that. He should have had every right to come out and say that about the Brereton report and about everything that he knew. Angus Campbell is equally as guilty as those men on the ground in a Yamashita protocol, in command responsibility that no one in this country seems to be responsible for. And it's about time the people flexed their muscle and made them responsible for the very actions that they've committed. Now, we said they already committed it. They already broke the law. They already poisoned a population. They already planned this with their WEF partners. They already planned this with their foreign interests. Section 44(1). They are all outside of the Constitution for doing so. All of them. And they've got hidden pedophiles in their judicial system to protect them. And it's now time you all started to realise this and say we aren't going to put up with this. We want these pedophiles jailed. We want them removed from our judiciary. We want our parliament accountable for all of the crimes that it has indeed committed, including Lydia, including Pauline, including Albo, and including all those that are no longer in Parliament. Scott Morrison. A war crime is a war crime, and these people need to suffer for what they've done, and these people need to be brought before courtrooms for what they've done, and we need to hold the Department of Public Prosecutions to account if they decide to remove any of those cases from the court. We will sue the Department of Public Prosecutions if they attempt to deny justice in the matter. It's very clear now that you've all been playing a bogan, childish game, while some of us have been acting like grown-ups before judges, putting down the foundations and the groundwork to be able to make accusations of serious nature against politicians who work under oath in that parliament. In that parliament, including Lydia, including Jacinta, including all those Aboriginals in that parliament that decided to serve the United Nations instead of their people. Instead of their people, followed the bidding of foreign interests to get it done, used the money of those foreign interests to impact the people of this country, to enslave them on behalf of corporate money masters like the Rothschilds in Israel under contract, right? The lies will end. The crimes will be called out. Those responsible for those crimes will be publicly shamed for doing so. And the record will be built up, and we will publish everything. So every Australian can see. We know exactly what they are. We know exactly where they came from. We know exactly what they serve. And we know that they've broken every rule that they put on the table when they brought that rule here. Sip, sip from a poison chalice. If we put that poison chalice to our own lips, were the words in 1946, and they all sipped with their Diddy partners, with their Epstein partners. They all sipped. They're all linked together. They're all in cahoots together, and it's becoming very, very evident in front of all your eyes. The military have got a slow game in front of them, because if they do it quickly, they might fracture all of your belief systems and cause you to go manic instead of slowly arrest those responsible, like the 28 people that they hid inside this very government and its judiciary. Maybe they've been hidden because they need to go in a RICO-style American gang case where they get treated as a gang together that committed some serious evil shit on this planet over the last 6-7 years, over the last 60, 70 years of peacekeeping, of coming into your country and enslaving you and driving you into sweat labour. Slavery, Abraham Lincoln's citizenship model. What did ScoMo say about rule of law? They brought the rule of law here. They broke the rule of law they brought here, and they expect us to follow the rule of law they brought here. Maybe they should answer for the crimes they've committed, and maybe we should start to realise this, and maybe we should stand together as a people, a country, and say no more to a foreign interest that wants to drive our economy into a digital slavery with its DNA modifications and all its eugenics. None of you are awake to the fact that these people believed that you were not good enough, therefore needed to be modified to make you better, to cattle tag you into their slavery, their real world slavery. And it's about time you all realised it. And it's about time we all stood up together. And it's about time we walked into a courtroom to do something proper, instead of being on the back foot to the police all the time. How about you charge the police with the war crimes that they've committed, called human trafficking? How about you charge the Parliament with the war crimes that it committed, called forced medical procedure? How about you stand up for your family for once, in a right of family, and a right of self-determination and a right of religion and all the rest of it, instead of bowing to them and being on the back foot to the police all the time because you think you can run around like a child. It would be better for all of us to step up as men and tell them that we've had enough and that we expect them to be accountable for all of the criminal offences that they've carried out since the start of this lockdown period and before. All right, so have a think about this, because while you're on the back foot risking going to jail for doing something stupid that may actually be a war crime committed by a police officer, you're fighting the legislation instead of fighting the war criminal, the actual officer himself that committed an act of human trafficking. It's about time you stood up. It's about time you realised. It's about time we moved forward. It's about time we gathered as a people. It's about time we helped our towns. It's about time we looked at putting this before a courtroom. It's about time you realised what I actually did, what I actually do, instead of believing that I did something for you to run around like a child, because that's not the case. The case is that we have an administrator in our country, a war criminal in our country, evil in our country, hiding behind parliament doors, hiding behind the judiciary, evil in our country that we just sat on our hands and accepted when they swept it under the carpet. Are we going to accept it anymore? Are we going to accept them lying to us anymore? Are we going to accept them committing crimes against the rules that are on the table anymore? Or are we going to stand up as a people, finally realise what that red flag actually means, and approach them and make their accusations? They are criminals. And we need to follow criminals. We need to remove them from the parliament for being in adherence to a foreign interest under section 44(1). Albanese, directly you. Why the hell would a referendum have come up to undermine the blessing of Almighty God in the first place? That's going against section 44(1) of the Constitution. And the senators sit on their hands because they're ignorant as fuck, aren't they? See, senators are dumb, uneducated, bogans. They don't know. How are you expecting your people to hold a government to account if the people that you put into those seats are dumb, ignorant, children in their own minds, incapable of addressing the very things that are put on their table? How do you expect a country to move forward from that at all? It's up to you to realise who they are, what they're doing, why they're doing it, and what they've done in the process. And it's up to you to think, will I allow that in my country? Will I allow 28 hidden pedophiles in my government? At the hands of my government. At the hands of my government. They swept it under the carpet. They hid it from the people. They didn't want it to be public knowledge because they knew the moment you found out, you'd realise who the fuck they were. And you'd want to get rid of them so fast. That's their scare. Well, their scare should be now that they have committed a war crime. They already did it. It's done. You can't undo what you did. You committed a war crime. And all that we need to do as a people is hold you to account. To realise this, that we can't run around trying to get out of fines when the fines are human trafficking to start with. We need to realise as a people, our opportunity is now, because they committed one of the most serious war crimes we've ever heard of. Far, far, far worse than 1946. So till next time, have a think about this and tell your neighbours, because unless you start doing so, this country's going to go down the gutter. And Klaus Schwab and his little money men are going to turn you into a prison where you will become their prisoners, their slaves to their digital world and their shrinking food supply. Right, I went to buy a jam which used to be in a jar this big and it's now in a jar this big. So when they talk about shrinkflation, what they mean is ripping you off and using language that is so above your ability to realise they're ripping you off.